Kia ora, welcome everybody to Hardware Meetup. Thank you so much for coming. Tonight's one is all about prototype to, what was it? Mass production, manufacturing in China. So we're talking all about, maybe you're a small New Zealand company, have done some prototypes and now you want to try and scale up big. Again, thank you for coming. We have our lovely panelists here who have awesome experience manufacturing in China for the various hardware companies. So the format for tonight is we will have a panel. We have collated some questions for them, which hopefully will be helpful. We'll run through that. We'll have a bit of a break partway through, then do some more questions, and then we'll of course open it up to the audience for questions. As always with Hardware Meetup, we also do the audience pitches at the end. So if you need someone or you're looking for a job or looking for technical advice, we encourage you to get up, pitch for a minute, and then people can come up and talk to you at the end. And of course, we couldn't be here today without our lovely sponsors. So huge thank you to Blackbird, who are an investment fund working here in New Zealand. They've invested in some awesome hardware companies in particular in New Zealand. Big thanks to Blender Design, as well as Grid Auckland for this awesome space, and Hudson Given Marden. They are a law firm and they're also offering a half an hour free chat with them for any legal advice. So definitely hit them up. I should probably say where they are. So if you're Hudson Given Marden, do you want to put your hand up? There they are. So go talk to them. If you're with Blender, there we go. One person. I don't think we have anyone from Blackbird. No, cool, all good. You may be confused as to why I'm here and not the lovely Elise, who usually runs Hardware Meetup. So I've been part of Hardware Meetup since it began, actually. So you may have seen my face around, but I've never had the courage to speak and run one of these. But I was really passionate about this one because I actually lived in China for 3 months, working in various hardware companies. And then also with my former company, Halter, I went over there to look at contract manufacturers and tried to find a good one. So I love China. I lived in Shenzhen. Just some photos of my time there. I speak very, very poor Mandarin. I can, order some food and that's about it. But yeah, I love China. Loved just the people and how fast they could build stuff there, especially Shenzhen, which is the kind of electronics capital. Onto our lovely speakers. So first up, we have Ollie here from Blender Design. You are the co-founder. And then we've got the lovely Jinju, who is the head of hardware at StretchSense. And then also we've got Ben, who is the CEO of Technique. So we'll start off with Ollie here. Do you want to just say a little bit about your company, what you do, and your kind of relationship with manufacturing in China?
Yeah, so I'm an industrial designer, and I've been in this game for about 16 years. And set up Blender 16 years ago. And we pretty quickly realized in New Zealand that we're really good at building prototypes, really good ideas, good at solving problems, but we're not so good at crossing that sort of chasm, the valley of death from going from prototype to mass production. And it's almost like our number 8 wire mentality, which gets us to that prototype point better than anyone else, is like our Achilles heel to get us into mass production. But yeah, we work with a variety of companies here in New Zealand and overseas, helping them to design and take through to production products that delight customers and are really appealing and things like that. And we collaborate with a lot of people in this room and a lot of really cool companies here in New Zealand.
I'm Jen. I'm from StretchSense. I'm leading the hardware team at StretchSense. So I just tell you a little bit brief history how we come up with the motion capture gloves. So StretchSense is making the motion capture glove for hand tracking. The main market we target for is the content creation, like movie studios, gaming studios, and also the VR training space. So it's about 2-3 years ago. At that time, the StretchSense is still making like stretchable sensors, soft sensors only. And then we're selling those sensors to customers. And then later on, we figured out that it took a bit long time for our customers to bring our sensors into a product and commercialize that. And then we say, okay, what is the gap there? And then later on, we figure out the customer has zero knowledge how to use our sensors, how to put the sensors on the body part, how to use sensors like performance data. So we decided let's move to the garments, make smart garments for our customers to speed up the prototyping phase. And then that has really good like feedback from the customer pool. And then we look at, okay, most of customers really interested in smart glove. And then that's how we move to the smart glove field. And then later on, we dig into more details that we find out the movie studio, gaming studio, those animators, when they use, they still use really traditional technique, like the animator was just hand manually to make the hand pose by the frame by each frame. So it's really time consuming and costly. So we launched our smart glove last year to the gaming studios, and then they start using our glove and find out that saves them heaps of time, cost, and then that's how we come up with the glove. And so far, this motion capture glove is the best performance in the world, and this has the best comfort. We in the last 2 years, we have made probably more than 100 prototypes to bring this to this stage. And we at the mass production stage of these gloves. And Ollie has helped us to design the basic enclosure at the beginning.
So I'm Ben, like Ollie, founded a company instead of getting a job. So we design camera systems. So we've been manufacturing in Asia for the last, for whole career. So spent a lot of time in various countries, not just China. And yeah, we develop vision systems that are used in a lot of products. So customers are mostly corporations, so that can use computer vision at scale. And so yeah, we're a big engineering company really, just based on the shore. So for us, bit of a different side to it. Like we're like the execution engine for big companies. So we're less about science projects and prototypes and more about making stuff. So we make millions of cameras a year, you know, throughout Asia. So we're big on mass production. And so, yeah, we kind of separate what we call science projects or things that we don't really have answers for to making something at scale. So, yeah.
Sweet. So just to set the scene a little bit, we're kind of coming from the viewpoint of, you know, a New Zealand company who's done a bit of manufacturing with New Zealand manufacturers, and now they're looking to scale big. So first question is, you know, they've received advice to work with manufacturers in China. You know, why am I receiving this advice? What do you think?
It could be many things. Yeah, it could be that the people that you're talking to don't think you're any good at manufacturing, but I think it, you know, it's a good question. You know, perhaps something that you want to understand more about manufacturing, and it's really around, is it a right fit for you? When you're looking to manufacture in Asia, you're generally trying to get closer to the supply chain and you're trying to scale. So if those are the type of problems that you're trying to solve in your business, then yes, you should be doing it because there's a bunch of benefits to doing that. But yeah, in a nutshell.
Cool. For us, a bit interesting, like it's sort of aligned with our product roadmap and then the market volume, because we know there's a limitation in New Zealand, like the volume won't be big enough, and making the garments, smart garments, the China has the biggest manufacturing power. And also we got investor GD1, they have heaps of connection in China. So they bring us to connect us with manufacturing in China. Yeah.
It's an interesting phenomenon that China always gets brought up when you're trying to choose where to manufacture. It's more a question about where is the best place to manufacture your product, and if it's a global product, a global strategy, you know, China is well placed for that. You know, we work with a lot of New Zealand manufacturers, and also a lot of Chinese manufacturers, and whilst cost is one of the considerations, it's definitely not the main one. I'd say that capability comes up there. The Chinese manufacturers that we work with are incredibly good at what they do. You just have to build those relationships and, you know, find the right ones. Yeah, hopefully that answers that one.
Cool, awesome, sweet. And just for a bit of a technical question, what is the difference between a CM, an ODM, an OEM, and a JDM? You can thank Elise for this question.
There's actually, yeah, this is a great question because there's actually some people have different definitions for each of them.
Yeah.
It's actually really important to figure out what kind of manufacturing partnership you're looking for, because if you get into bed with the wrong one, the expectations are going to be misaligned all the way along, and it's just going to be a recipe for disaster. But I guess in a nutshell, a CM contract manufacturer is someone who is pretty well set up to make whatever you tell them to make. So you need to do all the engineering, all the problem solving, and just give them everything the specification, the drawings, the files, everything they need to make the product. And ODM is an original design manufacturer who will generally be making their own products, and they usually own their own IP. And so you might go to them with a napkin sketch. And an OEM this is where the OEM one gets a bit confusing, but usually they're making a component for something else. And so they're an original equipment manufacturer that in the vehicle industry example might be making a steering wheel that they sell to Volkswagen or Toyota, a few of them. And I think maybe an even better example is other components inside a motor vehicle, like you'd see Bosch in quite a lot of motor vehicles, and stereos across different brands are made by the same companies and so on. What was there another one?
It's JDM.
Oh, JDM, Japanese domestic market. Yo, no, that's joint development manufacturer. So that's quite a cool one. We like to do that kind of business model a lot, because it's kind of acknowledging that the manufacturer has a lot of experience and IP that they bring to the table, and you bring yours, and you want to collaborate, basically.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. I think you covered those really well. If you wanted to add anything, I'll put you on the spot there.
I guess it's really depending on your business strategy, how you want to go ahead with your, like if you have really good business idea, and like ODM is basically you take stuff from the shelf and then you can change the branding package. And OEM and CM, pretty much you have to invest a lot of things in design R&D stuff. So it's really depending on your business model on that.
Yeah, and ditto. I think, and when it comes to business strategy, if your differentiation in your business is your hardware, okay, then perhaps an ODM isn't going to be for you, right? You probably want to go for either JDM or a CM. If your differentiation, for example, is in the cloud, like you need a hardware device in order to kind of deliver your thing to, your product or service. Yeah, you kind of want to scale it as much as possible, right? So you want to find an ODM that's already making something quite similar, and you want to go to them, and you don't want to pay too much, and you don't really differentiate there, so that's really good. If a lot of your IP is very hardware centric or quite unique to you, then yeah, you're going to be heavy on the CM side.
Yeah, cool.
It's a good way to fast track.
Yeah, super fast track. And hey, look, that looks pretty much exactly like we like. We'll just like it in pink. That's ODM. Okay, but if you've got a big engineering team, that's a good point. If you don't have a massive engineering team, right, and you kind of have a good idea, it's a couple of you, you probably want to be leaning towards, again, the ODM, JDM route. So CMs are what big companies do with big engineering resources. And ODMs are what people that think. So it's usually a journey, right? So people start on the ODM and then they slowly get bigger and better until they're down at CM.
Yeah, cool. And then, how would you go about choosing a contract manufacturer if you decided that was the right path for you?
This is a super good question, and it's just so important. I think when you're looking for a contract manufacturer, or when you're presenting yourself, you are a walking opportunity, right? You got to think in that I am a business opportunity. So when I'm finding a partner, I'm going to be making them money. Now they're doing a service for me. They're obviously a supplier, but they're a partner. So you've really got to get that in your mindset, because the opposite of that is, oh my gosh, luckily this person's even talking to me. I've just sent them all my files, or they gave me a price. Great, I'll pay it. Okay, don't be like that, right? Control the narrative. When you're engaging with a partner, you're about to make them money. They're going to make you money. Pick the people that are already doing products or have capabilities that you lack, right? And so, I could get that's a massive question to answer, but main thing is that you're bringing opportunity, and when you're picking the size of the manufacturer, make sure that you're not bigger than 20% of their potential revenue, right? You don't want to be, the the real small guy. You don't necessarily want to be the really big guy. Like if you fall over, then they fall over. So there's a whole bunch of, it's a whole subject of picking a contract manufacturer, but in general, someone that that you can have a good business relationship with, someone that has skills that you don't, and you know, people with experience and track record in the kind of industry that you're in. That's one thing. Supply chain, yeah. If you're an engineering company and you've come up with a prototype, make sure that you pick somebody that's making existing products, so that's buying the existing parts that you're already using. So that's really important, because for every common parts that your manufacturer is using, that's in your design, well, now you don't have to worry about paying this for them to hold that stock. Okay, so you know, if you're coming into a manufacturer and 70% of your BOM is new to them, you walk away straight away. If it's, you know, 80% is common, then you've kind of got someone that's the right partner. Yeah, sorry, you keep going for ages, but I won't. Sorry.
Yeah, for us, the tip to choose a really good supplier, like a contract manufacturer, one thing is we normally do through connection, because that is pretty important to us. So that can set up your basic foundation. So your contract manufacturer know your company history, and we know their capability. And then we, over time, we treat them as a teamwork. This is a teamwork, because you have to, you don't think like, oh, I'm the buyer, I have the buying power. And then like, we should treat them like, give them as much information as we can, like say the reason why we're doing this design, why we have this dimension here, so they can have a bit more understanding in your product, and they can put more thoughts into your product and into your manufacturing. So basically, we just want to have a really reliable, good relationship, and at the beginning and over time, of course, when you do all sampling, all the process quantity, you will have all kinds of issues during like when you receive the batch quality might be different from batch to batch, and then you have to communicate with them really effectively and make sure you always get responsive. Like if you don't have really good communication from them, you probably, like especially we're in New Zealand, and if the supply is overseas, it will really put a lot of pressure on you. Yeah, so I think communication, keep the really good teamwork going. That's really key part to have a good relationship.
Yeah, communication and their ability to communicate is really key. Like you say, especially if, you know, we're down here in New Zealand and at the moment we can't travel. I'll tell you what not to do. Don't go on Alibaba and flick off a few inquiries and pick the cheapest one. Do invest as much time and effort into specifying your manufacturing partner as you do in specifying your CPU or whatever critical component, because it's like they could be the difference between success and failure. So we actually, because we're a consulting business, we work with a whole lot of different clients. We help them with supplier selection or manufacturing partner selection. We go through a process of really writing down an RFI, which is a bit of a, you know, request for information that we go through a process and send out to a bunch of manufacturers that are shortlisted. And in that RFI, we have information such as, you know, geographic location if we want them in a specific place, capability, volume of product they put through. Like Ben said, if you want to get a good fit for the volumes that you're doing, if you become, you know, small, you're not going to get the same service. And if you become too big for them, then they're not going to be able to keep up with your demand. Other things is an important one that's come up a bit recently is human rights stuff, and you know, are they health and safety? You know, do you want them to meet your ethics, code of ethics? So all of that information, and then you just go through that process. You know, it's almost like hiring a candidate, but even more important.
That's awesome. And could you tell us a little bit about your experience dealing with the kind of different types of manufacturers, like if you've dealt with ODMs versus CMs, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, recently actually we've been working with an ODM. They're traditionally an ODM, but we're trying to get them to do a more JDM project, to the point that we got quite far down the quoting process and things didn't look quite right. It's because they sort of assumed that they were they still had to design the whole product, and it was like 80% done. But yeah, the experience, I guess that kind of paints a bit of a picture, is that the ODMs having a mindset that they have their engineering team, they design the thing and they make it. And CMs, their mindset is, you know, we need more information from you and tell us what you want. I guess beyond that, experience with different types of manufacturers. Like we work quite broadly across not just manufacturers that do final assembly or electronics manufacturing, but just manufacturers that do just aluminium extrusion and just injection molding of keyboards and things like that. And I think this is when you get down into like the suppliers that supply the CMs, right? Where they have very specific capabilities, and it's really cool working directly with those guys, because you can really get into some quite creative problem solving and really understand what the know-how they have and how you can apply that to your product. So I guess maybe that's a learning from that is within your product design, you might be looking for a contract manufacturer to do the whole thing, but if there are specific parts in that design that have, I guess, special requirements, then you might like to go and find your own manufacturer or get more involved in the selection process for that supplier. And the same thing might be said if you're going to an ODM. A lot of the ODMs in the appliance space have pretty cruddy electronics suppliers. And so we recently worked on a product where we said, well, we will own the supply chain for that. So we went and found an electronics CM to supply the ODM with the electronic hardware.
Yeah, I think there's a really good example around handling the difference between ODM and CM we had. So when for our gloves, we can, like, the gloves can be washed in the washing machine. And then when we're selling this to the movie studios and gaming studios, they don't have laundry bag. And they expect us to provide some laundry bag. Then we just went to find a supplier from like internet, and then we put our logo on and then the branding on. So that's really sweet and ODM experience we had. And we don't have to spend heaps of like energy into how to make a laundry bag. And then when we start outsource our glove shells, like to manufacture in China, so we have to have a technical conversation with them once a week, and then we discuss all the sampling stage, and they make all the samples for us, and we provide feedback to them. And then the translation between English and Mandarin is really difficult as well. And then so we send them as many pictures as we can to explain what is the process, especially because the COVID hit us, we can't travel to the factory in China. So we had a lot of Zoom calls, conference calls. So that took a lot of energy and iteration between us. So yeah, so that's the two biggest difference between OEM and ODM for us. But at the end of the day, I think both of them are really good. But from product perspective, normally we should review our product, which part can be ODM and which part can be OEM. That's how we minimize the BOM cost for that. Yeah.
Yeah, this is I don't know if I've got much to add. I could say that yeah, we do lots of EMS or CM work and ODM work. And like you say, you know, some things are just not worth you trying to go and design, right? Like that's not what your differentiation is. So don't spend a huge amount of effort trying to do it. You know, for the CM, like we manufacture some of our stuff here in New Zealand, right? High value stuff. Some stuff we SMT in Thailand. Some stuff we manufacture in China. So, you know, so when you're building something, you've got to be pretty open to working with lots of suppliers. And we also just recently had a piece where great ODM, great track record. We're going to do something quite different at this ODM, particularly in terms of the optics. And we know that they don't have the capability to do that. and they're also transparent with us. They want to lose the business, don't want to lose face in that relationship. So they also aren't comfortable. But we have a module supplier, which is a sub-supplier, a component supplier to them, which plugs back in. And it's really important to have a relationship with your CM or your ODM that you can peer in to their supply chain. Because when there is a problem with a component part, often, like, especially if you're doing something different with that ODM that they haven't done before, you are going to need to jump in and you're going to need to help and you're going to need to work as a team, just as Jen mentioned. So I think, that's a few experiences from my side.
Awesome. And trying to find a manufacturer, how can you tell if a manufacturer is, legitimate and good at what they do?
I could tell you a lot of really fun stories about this, and you can ask me afterwards. But in the core essence of it, it is a struggle with COVID and not being able to travel. And I would say that 90% of our relationships are built on a lot of air miles. Okay, so these manufacturers, we've been working with them for 15 plus years. So we know everybody. We know the company bosses. We know all of the staff. We know where they are. So it is a tough one at this point. And I think to Ollie's point, don't go on AliExpress or Alibaba. How that works is those people are often based in Shenzhen. They're probably running a store in Huashan Bay, and they're flicking stuff at AliExpress, right? You kind of need to get to the factory, and you need to get to that factory and understand who that is. I would say I haven't formed any new factory partnerships since COVID, so I can't help on that, but I can say it's a lot of FaceTime and a lot of working with them. Factory inspections are important. If you can't do it now, then you have to pay somebody to do that. I don't know. I have to pass it on. I don't know how you would do that nowadays.
Yeah, I think one takeaway from my experience in the past, when you talk to someone, supplier, something, if you send them a design, if they do give you some technical feedback, probably that's at the beginnings, that means they're sort of qualified to because someone especially you put tolerance there, and some workshop can do or cannot do, they will tell you what they can achieve, what they cannot. That will be really open mind to you. That can give you more reliability. But some really bad example, bad workshops, they probably say, oh, I can do everything. And when you receive the sample, basically it's totally out of tolerance. So that's probably you can tell from the emails or communication that if this is legit or not. Yeah.
So what was the question?
How can you tell if a manufacturer is legitimate or good?
Yes. You need to go and visit them. It really does help, but there's certain other ways to do it. We actually have a lot of people that work for us over in China, and guys and girls that sort of act as agents, and so they can go and do the actual physical visiting for us. Helps to show that they're legit. I mean, Alibaba actually does have some pretty cool tools to it. Don't use it as your only way of choosing a supplier, but it is actually quite useful in creating a shortlist and if they're verified. And then you've got other things that are sort of standard in recruiting, right? Like references, portfolio, get them to send samples to you. If they are the main manufacturing partner you're going for, then really would encourage to try and go and see them at least once and get to know them, because they're a partner. You need to get on with them. If it's just a vendor relationship where they're supplying a part, then just get them to make a sample and get on a video call. They can take you on a tour around their factory. And like Jen and Ben have already said, that if they give good quality technical feedback and questions, that helps. I remember being in a meeting once. We were going for a job and we lost the job because the guy said your engineer didn't ask any questions. Remember that one?
Wow, awesome. Cool. So you've kind of mentioned obviously how important it is to build relationships and be over there. hopefully in this post-COVID world, people can get back over there. But I guess if you are over there, how important is it to know Mandarin? And if you can't learn Mandarin overnight, what are your kind of options if you don't know it?
I don't think the language barrier is the big barrier. I think it's more the kind of culture barrier, and getting to understand that Chinese culture of saving face is something I found quite personally challenging to wrap my head around, because I'm a very blunt, call a spade type person. So it really goes against my natural way of doing things. But yeah, if you can, Mandarin hasn't been a big challenge for me. And like I was saying before, when you set your requirements for your manufacturers, if communication is really important and you don't have Mandarin speaking staff, if you can choose a manufacturer that has really good English speaking staff, then do that, right? But it hasn't really been a big challenge.
Yeah. Cool.
To me, it's like my first language is Mandarin, but I would say it's a bonus to have to know how to speak Mandarin, but not must have. Because what I find out that when I was being a translator between my colleagues and the supply in China, a lot of engineering terminology, I don't know how to translate from English to Chinese and how to translate a Chinese to English, but both parties expect you know everything. That's put a lot of pressure on me. And then a lot of times I have to stop there and think what exactly you're talking about. And I need to process myself and then trying to use phone or something to help me to do the translation. And I don't think that's a really must-have skill. It's just like a bonus. It's to help you streamline the communication. And the other thing is, the good thing to know how to speak Mandarin is that when you have supply on the other side, when they talk about their things in Mandarin, you probably can hear what they're actually talking about. And then you probably can take that from them. And that's the only thing I find out is really good. But apart from that, I don't think it's really must have. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd agree. Like, it's not a must have, and, you want to build relationships, right? And, it starts pretty basic. There's a problem, everyone can see a problem, right? Let's go and get around and fix it. So, but it is handy having people that are on your staff that can speak Mandarin, or if you've got somebody that that might just be helping. If it's in an email, you can always translate it. But at the end of the day, it can also depend on the type of thing you're trying to manufacture. So as you go down in terms of we're in the hardware meetup, right? So a lot of people here are building electronics or something reasonably complicated or difficult. So generally there's very good English spoken anyway. So, but if you're making something that is a really commodity product, that could be a bit more a challenge. You might be talking in a factory which can't afford to hire people that have good translators themselves, in which case, try and ring up your mate and get them to come over. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Awesome. So you briefly mentioned saving face. I guess in particular for Jen, what are some cultural things that perhaps people in this room should be aware about to have a positive relationship with contract manufacturers and manufacturers in China?
I think in China, I think Kiwis do leave really good expression to Chinese. They think New Zealand is a nice and beautiful country. So when they heard you are working in New Zealand or you from New Zealand, they normally have really good welcome towards you. So there's in Chinese, there's an old saying that it is always delightful to have people from overseas. So they normally take really good attitude towards you from overseas. And then when we're doing actual business, they do it in the principle for Chinese is they want to have honesty and reliability and trustworthy. So that means they would expect you to give them really clear answer, black and white. And then the spec is really clear, and also, of course, make payment in time. That's really important, actually. So we in the past, we do have sometimes we do have accounting problems like the company policy. And then you can say the supplier is really screaming and they say, oh, you need to pay me now. I was like, okay, yeah, we will get that done as soon as we can. So it's not really hard to establish a really good relationship with the supplier. They normally really communicate responsive and really productive. Yeah.
Cool, sweet. So switching gears a little bit, let's say we've picked our contract manufacturer. Where do you start? How do you source materials and actually start up a production line?
Yeah, so sourcing material is really difficult. We do have lots of problems there before. Back to a few years ago, we have a big project, and then we sourced the fabric from Chinese manufacturer. And then when we do the sample run, everything goes pretty well. The fabric is made out of spec, and then the stretchability, the dye, the color of the fabric is pretty good. And then we went to order like the batch, the batch ordering. The first batch is nice, fits to our process nicely. And then over time, when the second batch and third batch comes in, the quality is different. And then one engineer come talk to me and ask, oh, there's a problem in the fabric. The dye was leached out after solvent treatment. Then I was like, okay, let's go back and find out what's the root cause. And then we find out the dye they use in the fabric was different. So we went back to the supplier, says what happened? And then the supplier told us, oh, they changed the formulation in the dye because there's a recent environment regulation updates in China. So they have to change the formulation. So they probably the stabilizer in the dye is not good enough. So that's how I find out. So we have to keep really on top of everything and then make sure the supplier knows our process and then knows what we're dealing with the materials on that. Yeah.
Hand over the money basically to get things started. Money talks, and you got to pay that deposit to get things happening, even to start to finish off some of the conversations that need to happen to get things started. You got to show that you're committed.
Yeah, we use a thing called a RACI chart when we're like really kicking off. So after we've kind of found the person and the manufacturer or someone that we're already working with, use a thing called a RACI, which really spells out who's responsible for what. And it's not just who's responsible, but who's communicated, and being really, really clear on all the different parts and process. So everyone's kind of signed up to that. And yeah, we find, paying them people, on time, setting up your finance and your accounting systems so that you're able to deal with it. You don't want to be sitting there suffering trying to pay somebody in US dollars because you've never done it before in the bank, right? So go to the bank and figure out how to do that first. And saying that, we just had one of our payments blocked into an existing supplier in China, right? Like follow-on payments are all fine, but for some reason, China, the government decided to take a look at it. So this sort of stuff happens. So yeah, just be the benefit of the doubt, right? Pay them again, okay? And it will come back, okay? So I know that sounds pretty crazy, but the relationship is worth more than, a couple of bucks, right? And it's always going to come back. So yeah, kicking things off, get real clear responsibilities, set up your schedules of when you're going to be catching up with people regularly, meeting, sort out some sort of WhatsApp, WeChat, someone who's got on the phone there so they can, make sure that you're able to talk that. Yeah, I mean, writing email and Google doesn't work, okay, for a lot of parts. So just, yeah, try and adapt your working style a little bit to be the best that you're seamless to work with. Yeah.
Cool. Sweet. And on the subject of paying for things, what should you expect from a cost perspective, and how do you sort of negotiate price?
If you're on the ODM front and you're buying something and, hey, I'd like to buy one of those, but I'd like to buy it in pink, expect to pay some NRE, which is a non-recurring engineering fee, and then expect a price, okay? That's the price, you pay it. Maybe you get a discount if you buy volume. So you don't really see under the hood. If you've got a good relationship and a JDM, expect that you're going to be seeing a BOM cost. It may not be fully broken out to parts, but you're going to be seeing each part that's in your product. You know how much you're paying for it. It's up to you if you want to go and account for that and figure out from your supply chain. If you're doing a CM relationship, like a lot of our stuff, you're basically finding the part numbers and sourcing it. And then obviously working with their common parts list. So you integrate that common parts back into your PLM system so that when you're doing your engineering for your electronics, that you're changing your parts to make sure that they're the parts that the equivalent part the manufacturer has. So yeah, getting parts and costs is a sliding scale of detail and transparency, and it depends on the type of engagement you've got and the relationship that you have. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, so when we're making our product, we normally have two phases of the project. The first part of phase is cost up. So that means spec up the product. So at that moment, we won't too much care about the cost. We want to use the most quality, reliable parts for the glove for our product. And then when we come down, when the product is more stabilized, then we will come down to cost down speed bump. So that's how we bring down the cost of the product. And then we look at different suppliers, different alternatives, and then how we can make more cost-effective product. And when we come to payment terms, when we're talking to a supplier, we normally will do like split payment of 50-50 or 30-70. Like we won't pay them 100% because there's a really huge risk behind that, because either the supplier can delay your shipment and you just lose all the negotiation powers when you make 100% payment on that. And normally if a reasonable supplier, reasonable manufacturer, they would accept 50-50 payment with you. And then we do have manufacturing in New Zealand and also manufacturing in China. So when we compare the price, the cost, the quotation we receive from China is probably a fraction of the cost in New Zealand. That is really attractive, but then there's also the risk behind that. You probably lose the control of the quality, and then the shipping is taking probably at least 1 week from China to here. So you will lose the lead time. If you under pressure of delivering a particular project, then the lead time is something you probably need to consider rather than cost.
Yeah, I think cost, like negotiating prices, is often you got to think about the repercussions. If you start off the relationship all about driving costs down, then you might end up with some quality problems down the track. So I think it's like really important to drive, quality first, and then cost. And I think just be aware that they've got a business to run, they've got to make margin, and don't make them feel like they can't increase prices because they'll find another way to save costs. These ODMs have their own cost down policy, right? Where they'll deliver you the great peachy product to start with, and then version 3's got a few components off the back of a truck. These stories, there's a lot less of them, but they're still out there. And so, yeah, just be wary when negotiating price. The other thing that you can do is if you're ordering a lot of a particular part in a certain material is go build up the cost from the material price, material plus labor, machine time, and you can kind of work out a bit of a ballpark that way.
Yeah, nice, cool. Yeah, and on the subject of cost, have any of y'all had to deal with the kind of China and US tariffs in manufacturing your products?
Nope.
No.
Not yet.
Yeah, it's a considerable issue. If your market is in the US, then yeah, you need to be very well aware of things like transformation and where you're actually doing what in your business. So yeah, there's a bit of a minefield in that, but just be aware of tariffs. Europe has tariffs too, right? Some parts and the way that you're going to manufacture, it doesn't mean that you can't manufacture in China. It just means the way that you do it is slightly different. So transformation is a process around how you can get around tariffs. It means the value of the thing that you're doing can be transformed outside a market. So, for example, Fitbit's a good example. Fitbit ships out of China with no firmware on it. okay, because it doesn't do anything. So it's a little wee piece of plastic, okay. But magically, when it's connected to your computer for the first time, it's programmed with firmware and suddenly it's a useful device. There's obviously more to it than that, but yeah, tariffs are part of the way the world works now. And so it's important to understand them.
So yeah, we'll kick off with, you've picked your CM, you're now building your product. How do you go about actually testing your product and making sure that it's going to work when it arrives, at your doorstep or your customer's doorstep?
This is a big question. So in 20 years, we've learned a few things about making sure that your products are made to spec. And that's kind of eventuated in us owning a lot of IP around how we engineer our products. So for people who are building hardware products that build things called test fixtures, if you know about test fixtures, often you want to own that. So you know how to make your product. So for us, like when we first started, years ago, we'd send some design files over. And yeah, it was just a really slow iteration, right? Because you just, you get them back, it's, oh, that's not quite right. This didn't, and really it was our fault, right? We weren't really being very clear around how we wanted our product to work and test. And so that's why communication is really important. As we grew, our test or production test of our equipment became crucial to the quality and particularly contractually for our customers. So, because the customers are very big customers, they expect really high quality products. We build test fixtures, which are effectively a big box, which you plug your device in. We would build, I don't know, any product we would be making might have anywhere between 5 and 15 different steps of testing. And then in that, you've got some software which runs in this box. You plug in your thing and it goes through and actually goes and tests itself. So you might have a PC there. And yeah, we have a system which has got Mandarin, it's got Vietnamese, also English translations, and that talks to the operator who's actually making the goods. And then, they're pushing the button and it gives them back the error code. If you're really seriously wanting to invest in manufacturing, you will get there at some point, and that will become crucial to your business. And there's a big sliding scale. So, starting with a really good spec, this is what we really want. This is how you test each part of all the features. This is the expected behavior. This is bad behavior. You've got to spend almost as much time doing that part as designing the entire product. If you do that, then you'll get great quality, and you'll also, really you'll get better prices, you'll get better yield, and you'll actually get a better partner relationship, right? So yeah, I can't emphasize test and quality enough. It's really, really important.
Testing at StretchSense is quite different, because the smart glove we're making is, no one has made that before. So it's completely new product. We don't have a benchmark, we don't have a reference. So we made the product and then we pretty much use engineering common sense to say, is this acceptable? Is this not? And a lot of times, engineers would like to dig into really deep details and just stuck in there really fine details, and then that means we'll delay the product shipping. And then because this is a new product, we really want to test product and market fit. So a lot of times we really expect customers can give us really good feedback, and we take their feedback and do another next iteration change. That's pretty much how StretchSense works, is that as this is a new product, we work really closely with our customers and test what they expectation and what is the most user-friendly features they would really want. And then once we have more understanding about market needs, what customer needs, and then we put all the features and make the next iteration of the product. And then over time, we learn what is good, what's not. And then that's how we come up with the spec. So it was really struggling for the engineering team at the beginning, is that everyone's running in the dark. No one knows what is the reference line. And then when we bring to the product to the mass production, and then because it's still a new product, everything is customized. So we have lots of issues with suppliers, and then we have to expand to them, and then we figure out things together. That's really nice journey, I would say, but it's also really stressful, like, because you have to deliver your product to the customers, and then in the meantime, you have to figure out the process. But at the end of the day, we always tell the engineers that just be prepared for all the changes we are having. Like, the engineers here is to creating issues and fixing issues. That's how we keep the product going. Yeah.
Quality, the single most important subject of the evening, I think. Good quality products start very early on in the development process. A good product designer, developer will be thinking about DFMA, or design for manufacture and assembly, from the very beginning. And so you can make some big decisions early on that will have an impact on your product quality. So you're thinking about things like how is the product assembled? How can we design it in a smart way so that we don't design in some problems, which I guess through experience you can figure out what they are, but there's always some surprises. So you're cruising through your product development process, and you're getting near the end, and you start writing a standard operating procedure, and actually start giving instructions for how your product goes together. And that might start off with just a simple exploded view and some notes. These screws go here, etc. But then as you move further along and start working with your manufacturer, there's a much more robust process, and you start to see where points in that process you can put a bit of a check, a quality check. And thinking about that process discipline is really important. And one of those steps for, I guess, finding poor quality or like a quality check is like incoming goods, right? Like IQC. And I guess even before that, selecting your manufacturing partner who has really good quality processes. And if you're able to go and see them, you can have a look around. And that's sort of the number one thing that I'm looking for, is a well-organized factory with good quality processes, good SOP instructions, workers that are following those instructions, a good rework test bench, everything's in the right place. It all helps. So then you're sort of at that point where the product's designed and engineered, and you need to write a quality control plan and discuss this with your manufacturing partner up front. What are you going to do together to manage quality, and what are the repercussions if that quality isn't met? So I'd suggest familiarizing yourselves with AQL, which is acceptable quality limits, which is quite a common, I guess, method used to define what's acceptable and what's not, because there's always like ambiguity around what is acceptable and what's not. And you have to be realistic about what you accept. But yeah, try and design the poor quality problems out at the beginning, and then just be really, really anal about managing them as you go through, and do checks on every single production batch. We use a few agents in China that do final inspections, which are really important. I mean, they're used pretty widespread for even just purchasing goods for Kmart or whatever, right? So there's heaps of agents out there that can help do that. But it's really important because you don't want your goods to leave the factory if they're not right, because you can't send them back. Then you've got a tough kind of negotiation on your hands. And like when it comes back to that payment terms things as well, like your final payment should be on passing of a quality inspection. Yeah, I think that's rambled enough on that one. Just cool. Yeah, really, really important. Don't forget about it.
Yeah, cool. So obviously, unfortunately, in today's world, we're dealing with COVID-19, which has affected supply chains, particularly silicon chips and things like that. So how have your respective companies dealt with, trying to source parts and get things done in this kind of...
Well, the silicon chip thing started well before COVID, didn't it? It's like,
true.
It's too much demand. But yeah, COVID's been a bit of a problem.
Thanks.
What can I say? What are we doing to help with that? Yeah, we're using our agents over there a lot more, spending way less time on planes, and lots more Zoom calls and WeChat. Yeah, WeChat is key. Yeah, I don't know what else I can add to that. It's just it's kind of just the new normal, right? Just got to deal with it.
Yes, funny enough, we just had a really urgent meeting this morning, like talking about how we got a Bluetooth chip like shortage, global shortage on that. So we discussed all the options we had. Like basically, it's just down to like plan ahead, like with all the critical components on your PCB, and then find out the lead time from there, and then talk to many distributors as you can to find out if they have anything in stock in hand. Like even a small quantity would help a lot. And then also like design wise, trying to standardize your design and minimize the number of trips on your design if you can. I think that's one of the automotive companies start doing, like standardize all their trips and minimize the number of trips in their system, so that can how they manage the risks behind that.
Yeah, and it comes back to that 80 rule, 70-80%. So if you're working with a manufacturer who 70 or 80% of your BOM is already in a part that they have sitting there because they're making other products with that component in, then your risk is massively reduced. So again, comes back to your supply selection. So I know that these chip shortage, but how we deal with it at the moment. So firstly, forecasts are useless. So you've got to have an order. No one's going to listen to your forecasts anymore. So it means you're going to have a PO and you're going to be ordering, and that PO may be a year ahead. So for us, we just secured all of our inventory for the rest of the year. And unfortunately, we had some components in there that were very specific to our design. We can't design them out. So we had to spot buy those, right? So, there goes a couple $100,000 of spot buy, price, and you just have to wear it, right? Now you can surcharge it on your customers, but that's kind of how you do it, right? So you want to have, again, good relationship with your contract manufacturer or your procurement, help them out, right? If you've got a weird part, you go away, you find the person to link them up, get them to be buddies on WeChat, and then boom, you get your price again. So yeah, how you doing at the moment? You're just going to have to pay the spot price. It'll, long term, it'll come down again, probably in Q1 next year.
Cool, sweet. Yeah, so last question before we go to audience. Obviously, you've all built up, awesome relationships and production lines. I think Ben, you mentioned it's been 20 years in the making. I'm sure you didn't get there without hitting some road bumps along the way. So could you maybe give us an example of some common pitfalls to avoid for someone starting up, and then maybe an example of when you've gotten something wrong, perhaps, and what you learned?
Oh yeah, there's lots of cool stories. Yeah, I remember we had a big customer in the US, and they had an agent in China, and we kind of had to work through this agent to buy parts. And we asked some technical questions, and this is back to your Jen's question, right? We asked some technical questions, and the answers were a bit shady. So we sort of dug a little bit deeper, and we said, well, do you know what? We're coming over to Shenzhen, and we're going to be there on June the 2nd for a visit. And wow, that was an amazing actually. He'd actually gone and found a buddy and kind of rented some old factory space, kind of built like a half-built manufacturing line. I was a big customer, right? So it was a big, it was worth it for him to do that, go to that trouble. Wandered up and went in the door, and this was clean room manufacturer of lenses. Okay, so lenses are a small optical thing. It's very, very specialist equipment. And I was sort of, I was like, I don't really do this in this particular area, right? Like, lenses generally come out of an area in between China and Taiwan. We were there, and he's taking us through this place, and I was like, and there's this clean room, like you can buy these things which basically kind of, I don't know, that they're pass clean room for walking into glass environments. And so you walk in through the door and it kind of blows you full of air and you got to get all the stuff on. And then you go into the clean room. Except this thing had just been installed, right? Like literally must have been done a week ago. So it wasn't installed properly. And he didn't know what to do with it. So he just walked in right next to it, next to this door that was there, and didn't use it at all. So I was like, okay, we're not going to go here. This is not really the supply we want. And so, you know, it went to show, like, we had the US customer with us, right? And they'd come all the way over. We really had to get to the bottom of this. It was a big issue. There's an image quality problem. And so that was kind of the pitfalls about agents, and it was a really big eye opener for that customer to know that they needed to be dealing directly with the manufacturer of the lenses, not through a second agent. But you know, it was a real eye opener. And sometimes you just really got to force the issue. And the warning bell was just exactly as Jen had mentioned, technical questions that were not answered correctly, and it was a big lesson. So that's one of the big things that we've certainly learned. And yeah, over the years, you know, we're just working with good people, right, that are honest and transparent. So there's always going to be somebody out there that isn't honest and transparent. Just got to weed them out.
Yeah, when we're making this product and mass produce the gloves, we're making heaps of mistakes pretty much every week. Well, at least that's one period is pretty much every day. So one really interesting example I can think of is it's about same time last year, and we have designed PCB, and then we asked supply to send us the PCBs, and that PCB has been manufactured a lot of times. But we would like to add a double-sided tape on the back of PCB for us to help the process improve the productivity. And then we talk to the supplier, can you add a double-sided tape here? And they say, there's no problem. And then we look at all the risks we will have potentially. But looks to us is that it's really minimal risk to add the double-sided tape. What would go wrong? And then we bring the PCBs in, and then we put that on our sensors. And then at the first day, the process went really, really well. All the engineers really happy because the process is so faster. The yield was pretty high. And then once everything's assembled, and then we test the function of the sensors, everything was failed. All the sensors was failed. And then we start like panicking, like trying to get to the bottom of that, trying to find out what has went wrong. And we look at the sensors. Nothing wrong. We look at PCB design, nothing wrong. It's just the cutout was a little bit offset, off center. So we don't think that is a root cause. But then all the production was holding up, and then we're trying to find the root cause. But we're saying, oh, let's reproduce the same batch. But then it's really panicking because you don't know what was the root cause. If you just reproduce another batch, you'll probably end up in the mistakes and the same place. And then we look at all the possibilities and they say, the only change we made is just add the double-sided tape. And then we look at the double-sided tape, we figure out when they put the double-sided tape, the laser cut the double-sided, the masking paper got a carbon dust at the edge. Somehow the double-sided tape become a conductive. So it's causing all the shorts to our sensors. That's how I figure out. And then the carbon particles is really minimal, and it's only at the edge that is enough to trigger all the failures in the production. So just be careful all the changes you make. Even though it's a really simple one. Yeah.
Wow.
That's cool.
It's a really good example, actually. But I guess the lesson there, right, is don't panic and make a change, because that can throw you on, like, put you in a worse situation. So thinking of some common pitfalls, not doing enough testing and only testing like one unit, assuming that all the rest are going to be the same.
Seems too real.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing worse than, 3 months after selling your product, you're getting all these returns, eh? It can absolutely destroy your business, and it's a lot more expensive and difficult to manage that. So just test, and whilst it might be hard to smash up 100 of your units or whatever. You just have to be quite disciplined with that. Another pitfall might be you're not specifying things specifically enough. If you leave too much for interpretation, then yeah, it may be interpreted differently. The other one could be if you don't know if you can't find your t-shirts in your hotel, look in the wardrobe, because when you put in the laundry, sometimes they get hung up on coat hangers. And don't cheap out on hotels, because the last one that I stayed at in Guangzhou, because it was like Canton Fair time and it was like real busy, we couldn't get into the hotel we wanted. I let Ben, not this Ben, but another Ben, book it. And we went into the room. It was just like, I don't smoke. It smelled a lot like cigarettes in there. And so I went down to reception. I said, we booked a non-smoking room. And they said, yeah, just open the windows if you want to smoke. But yeah, that can happen anywhere. Yeah.
Oh. Awesome, cool. So we'll open up to questions. If you have a question, just put your hand up and we'll go from there. Yeah.
When you provide your PCB files, your assembly instructions, and the rest of your source code as well, how do you protect the IP?
I'll just repeat the question, yeah, for the recording. So the question was, when you send over your PCB and design files, how do you protect the IP?
We actually use an encryption chip. So we actually design in our hardware, all hardware, we have a TPM module. As processors have advanced, we actually have secure processors now in our newer models. But so what happens is the software, when our firmware boots, it makes sure that that not only that chip is present, but that chip has been it does a verification on the key that it's been signed by our A, official manufacturer, B, that it's what the serial number is. It's a bunch of things in there, and we actually have on our production system, we have our own software which sits inside all the manufacturing lines. And that's our software, which is the thing connecting to the cloud, which is programming that key. So that signing is actually happening on the manufacturing line in real time. So you have to have a security thing, and it's just plain common sense. It doesn't matter where you're manufacturing, because you need to be able to audit how many units you're producing, and you also need to be able to secure your software. And this also comes into transformation when you're manufacturing in China and you need to go to the US, you need to sign one key which says, okay, this is now, I've tested this device, it's actually been tested and it's passed, so that your software is verified that it's passed it, but you haven't actually programmed anything useful in it, right? And then it gets to the US, and then the first thing is, okay, now I've checked that yes, this did pass quality control, and now I'm going to do the transformation, put the algorithm in it. So yeah, there's definitely a few stages to that, and that's one way to protect IP. For hardware, it's pretty tricky. You should never send your source files, your Altium or your things. You should send your Gerbers. If you've got a really good relationship with the manufacturer, then yes, okay. But if it's someone that you haven't built that relationship with yet, then you're best to work in Gerbers. And so yeah, just try and make sure that you're also you can have some leverage if something goes wrong.
Yeah, for us, we actually design our own chips. So when we dealing with supply, we provide them our own chips. So that's how we one way to protect our own IP, and also we do have our own firmware. So when they manufacture PCB, it's just a black board doing nothing. And when we comes in, we flash our own firmware onto that. It's
To add on.
That's a good question.
I can't add much except start by really getting to properly understand what your IP is, and don't, because then you might be stressing about something that's not worth stressing about.
Yeah, cool. Sweet. Cool. Yeah, Tom.
You kind of touched on this a bit, but obviously there's the design and the sourcing, all those kind of parts. But actually in the factory, you're probably going to need some sort of software that tests the things you're building. So is that something you would get that factory to write, or is it something you provide them, or does it depend on the product?
Yeah, cool. So the question is, obviously in the factory, you need some sort of software to test your product. Do you write that software yourself? Do you get the factory to write it, or how does that process kind of work?
I guess it would depend on the product and the factory and everything, but I think these guys can add to it.
Yeah, for us, our product is quite unique. We wouldn't expect the supplier would test everything. We do the final inspection here. Once everything is assembled, we do have our own software to test the product. And we do give the spec to our supplier. This is the requirements we would like them to meet. But normally we wouldn't supply them any software because that is also one of our IP as well. Yeah.
So with software testing,
software.
yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the questions asked a contract manufacturer. Ask like they'll be running a thing called a manufacturing execution system or an MES system. Some call it MIS. That system is the thing which delivers the standard operating procedure to all the assembly workers. It plugs in all the quality information, feeds it back up, and usually, if you ask for an export out of their MES system, that'll give you the quality metrics. I think you mentioned an acronym that I can't remember. Was it AVL? AQL. Yeah. So when you, like say with the software, you've got to like plug into their MES, and that means that you've got to dump the output of your test results so that their MES can hoover it up. And then that MES system is the thing which kind of controls their shop floor. I don't know if anyone knows what that is. Shop floor system is like how you organize where all the people in the line are. And the MES system is kind of how that produces how it gets the data from all of the different stages. So yeah, you kind of have to plug in because a lot of these manufacturers have got their own home built systems for manufacture for their niche. And so you kind of have to write a little bit of software yourself. And yeah, but you have to plug into their software really, because otherwise, your manufacturing line becomes really way different than all their other lines.
Yeah.
Thinking about the quality control long term, you guys mentioned about the agent, like for quality check or dealing with the manufacturer. So how do you work with the agent? Like how do you choose and how do you trust the agent? Do you go through the same process?
I'll just do the question first.
What do they provide?
Yeah. So the question was about managing quality control long term. How do you do that with an agent? Sort of what do they provide and how do you manage that?
Yeah, so if we're talking about just agents to go and do inspections, they're only as good as the instructions that you provide them. And so selecting the agent, if you go through one of the reputable companies, TradeAda, Tesco, there's a few of them, they'll sort of vet agents and they make sure they, don't take bribery and all of that kind of stuff. So the key there is giving them a really good quality checklist and instructions for what they do. And yeah, they're just very, very good at measuring things and taking photos and counting stuff.
No, that's good, man. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, cool. Hang on, we'll go. Let's go down here first, then we'll go.
What are some of the other ways we can search for potential suppliers apart from, let's say, Alibaba? Is there some way of like browsing through a directory or something that maybe breaks in, or just approach you guys?
Yeah. So the question is, how do you actually find suppliers? Is there a resource that you can use, something potentially other than Alibaba, to find suppliers?
Google.
There we go.
Yeah, I think Jen said your own networks, first of all, people it always helps to have a recommendation. But other than the websites like Alibaba and its counterparts in the internet, I can't really think of any other ways other than getting on a plane and walking around China. It's a big place.
just walk around. Still find someone.
Yeah, I guess network is pretty important. And I guess LinkedIn, you'll probably have lots of message from that people like, and then check with your, normally I will do through recommendation. That's pretty reliable, fast, and then you can bring them up to speed and then have chat with them. That's what we do.
I was gonna say, like early days for me, I used to go to like trade shows. There's a couple of really good trade shows depending on what you're, and I remember those days. Quite fun, wandering around these massive halls and just, oh my gosh, there's so many people making Bluetooth speakers. But yeah, just going up and having a chat, like they're actually quite good. Often the trade shows are the real factory, right? They're kind of vetted before you go there, and there's a couple of really good ones that you can go to, particularly for hardware, electronics. So probably a couple of recommended ones, and they'll be back live again this year. So this could be a good place if you're wanting a bit more of a face-to-face relationship, and then you can follow it up with a factory visit, or you can build that relationship. So yeah,
got one more thing to add to that. This is a little sort of trick of mine, is whenever I go to China for a reason, I'll go and visit at least 2 other people or factories I've never met. Just keep building that network. Another thought was through your key component suppliers. They may be able to make recommendations for other people they've worked with, so they may already be using that key component in their supply chain.
Yeah, that's a good one, Mike. So for if you're using, like, say you've got a key component like a Bluetooth module, or you're buying a particular sensor, contact the actual manufacturer of that part, and then they will tell you who the recommended design-in partners for that modular. Okay, so you can then go to that manufacturer that's already obviously buying that part, tick, but also is making lots of other products using that part. So particularly for SoCs or key components like that, that can be another good way of doing it. It's good call.
Yeah, cool. Question over there.
Yeah, maybe want to know in terms of going through the decision-making process of selecting contract manufacturer, for example. Let's say you're still a startup, pretty small. Let's say you're making 500 a month, but you're planning that you're making 50,000 a month in 3 years' time. Right? How do you make sure when you're selecting the process that the contract manufacturer will have the capability to grow, or you keep on looking for the next one every year or something? What's your general strategy?
Would you repeat the question?
Right size is cool, right? We're doing some really fun project with a New York startup, right? And we're like trying to solve that exact problem. How, this is a big company. They're making basically making Arlo. Arlo is a big camera from Netgear, and we're like, how do we become kind of important with the supplier? So we bought them T-shirts, bought them a whole bunch of swag and hats. They're all on the assembly line, and we all got down there and we were like doing hard hours on the assembly line, and we built relationships with the people that were there, the line supervisors. Sometimes there's other ways to improve the relationship, but your first question is always go a little bit bigger than where you really are, right? So you always want to go for that capacity, because again, you're bringing business. You want them to be successful just as much as you want yourself to be successful. So usually it's kind of you trying to get them to buy into what you're doing, right? And so as a startup, it's always been really hard, but we've done lots of work with startups, and yeah, building the relationship, take them out for dinner, swag, T-shirts.
Photos of your kids.
Like try and be different than their normal day. Right?
Shout them a trip to New Zealand.
Relationship building.
I think the biggest problem, like as a startup, the beginning, the volume is really hard to predict. And always you will get question from contract manufacturer, oh, what's your forecast volume for this year? And then that's really tricky to answer, because really depending on the market feedback. And how we manage that is like, say, we will go through multiple phases with you. Like say, let's start with a sample run, and then we check the quality, and then we move on to the next stage, and then we can say how the customer feedback looks like, and then we slowly ramping them up. But of course, at the beginning, we would like to choose the most quality supplier, because we always put the quality first, and then we can look at scaling up next. Because I think in China, like upscaling is less problematic compared to upscaling in New Zealand. So they always have extra capacity, can go like extra mile. Yeah.
I'll just add something to that. I mean, we're talking about manufacturing in China, but there is a bit of manufacturing going on in New Zealand, and the capability is pretty good. So I guess be realistic about the type of product you have and the volumes you're going to be doing. If it's a high value, reasonably low volume niche product, that's a great fit for New Zealand, and we should try and support our manufacturers here, whilst they're not right close to the supply chain and they may have a few issues there. For the most part, we've got some, a handful of really good electronic contract manufacturers that are worth talking to. And I know that GPC has plant in Australia and Shenzhen, so they do have that scale up. Yeah.
Cool. Right, we'll take one more question. So back there.
Do you see a case of manufacturing components offshore and then assembling here?
So the question was, do you see a case for manufacturing components offshore, but then manufacturing or assembling, here?
Yeah, see it all the time. I mean, yeah, it's perfect. It's more difficult doing your final assembly in a place like China and then sending parts there. That's a lot more difficult to do. Not impossible. But yeah, we see a lot, especially where we just don't have the capability in New Zealand. You'll have to make the part overseas. But on that journey to mass production, if you're starting off quite small and you want to manage that quality, then there is a case for bringing all the parts over here and doing the assembly yourself. And there's so much learnings that you can get from that. So I guess whilst we're talking a lot about going and finding that manufacturing partner, there is a possible step before you get there.
Cool. Awesome. Well, we might wrap up there, but we do have audience pictures next. But could we get a round of applause for our awesome speakers? Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. I just quickly introduce myself and my company. My name is James. I come from NZFH. So we are a local supplier of electronics components, cables, batteries, instruments. I see some my customers and friends here, and we supply not only to customers, also to contract manufacturers. Actually, Technic is one of my customer. Actually, I just talked to Dan yesterday. So we supply some micro coaxial cable for their cameras. So especially at the shortage, the global shortage at the moment, we have a lot of local customers to meet their urgent requirements. So let me know if you need anything. And also I can tell you tips how to find a good supplier from Alibaba and AliExpress. Thank you, guys.
Hi, everyone. My name's Jackie. I'm an investment analyst working in venture capital. I'm also an ex-lawyer, and I'm also doing my postgrad in connected environments. I'm building a wearable fitness tech product. I've been working on it for a year now, and it's pretty much fully validated. I'm looking for a CTO, someone with a mechatronics engineering background, potentially AI. Highlights working with me include working with international supermodels as co-founders. I'm in discussions with a potential revenue stream of $7.8 billion in annual recurring revenue with the world's largest content provider in the space. And also we're going into the wellness, meditation, and brain tech space. So if you've got an interest in neurology, then that's a bonus too. Cool.
Hello, everyone. I'm Joey from Triad Group Limited, just over the North Shore. I know it's quite funny that we'll be discussing about shifting products overseas, and I'm telling you, do it here in New Zealand. So anyway, Triad Group is an innovative electronic contract manufacturing facility. We specialize in high quality products locally made. And we're just fortunate that we have the first SMT lines that has a 3-dimensional positioning system that helps us, set us to do that little bit further. And we are proud to be locally, to be a local over here. And we know it's a value that most Kiwis have it in heart. And so, yeah, we do lots of things. We do some work for NASA. We got some customers here from Loan Digital and even StretchSense. And if there's someone there, just let me know. And yeah, yeah, we can talk it over, probably over some bottles of beers or cocktails,
Hello, I'm Edith from Lumen Digital, and I highly recommend Triad. We have a really good relationship with them, so they are amazing and reliable manufacturers. But yeah, Loon. So we are specialized in embedded hardware and software development for wearable and portable devices, and we provided support for New Zealand and overseas companies in the past 10 years, or maybe a little bit over. And we are looking for an really super talented embedded engineer just to join our team. And so we are looking for someone who loves challenges, because we have really amazing and challenging projects. And if someone wants to be part of our team, then please come to talk to me. And if someone who really loves having beer Fridays and bakings during the week and playing some football in the working breaks. I'm sorry, can I just finish my sentence? Then please come talk to us. And if you need our expertise and help with your projects, we are happy to assist.
Hi, I'm Helena. I'm a member of Hackland. So I don't know if you know, it's just on Newton Road. We are a makerspace. And so if you are a bit before your prototyping phase and are just like kind of tinkering around in your garage and you need a better space to do soldering or wood workshops, CNCs, 3D printing, we are basically the makerspace that you can go and tinker around. So memberships are $20 a week, and there's discounts for students and like low income as well. And yeah, so come out, check us out. We are open every Thursday. That's tomorrow.
Kia ora everyone, my name is Anjali and I'm from Hudson Gavin Martin. We are a law firm and we are really excited to be supporting the Hardware Meetup and members. So what can we help with? We can help you with putting a business around the products that you're creating. So if you have questions around bringing equity and capital into your business, if you are having issues with shareholders, if you want to incentivize your employees and put a share option scheme in place, we can help you with that. If you want to protect your intellectual property and know how to take it to market, maybe take it to China, maybe bring on distributors, resellers, license your products and services out, come and talk to us. We are giving Hardware Meetup members 30 minutes of free time, so you can come and chat to us anytime. Yeah.
Yeah, my name's Simon. I work at a company called Vesper Marine. We're looking for a Kotlin Android developer to work on marine hardware, marine electronics. So if you're interested, come and see me afterwards.
Hey everyone, I'm Bex. I'm the CEO and co-founder at ZeroJet. So we do electric jet propulsion systems for small boats and tenders. So we do everything except for the boat. So we just do the whole propulsion system. So the motor, the batteries, and the jet system and how that all connects together. So we're hiring for a couple of roles at the moment, not so engineering related, but an office manager and an operations manager, and also a workshop technician. And pretty soon this year, we'll be hiring quite a few more engineers as well. So specifically electrical engineers and mechanical engineers. So if anybody's interested, please come and have a chat.
Hi, my name is Mikesh. I'm actually currently exploring a possible production line in 3D printing space. So we're launching a 3D printers for education sector mainly. So I'd be keen to talk to someone who has gone through the journey of launching a local manufacturing or production line and understand what the pitfalls are and what to watch out for, whether this is a good plan or not, to be honest. And also, if we go ahead with the possible production line, then we'll have probably 20 or 30 beta machines for testing in the field. So if you're someone who's been using 3D printers and see that you'll be using every day, we'd be keen to give one for free and just trash it and let us know how it goes. So the lady from Hackland would be keen to talk to you and yeah, give you one, and anybody who's keen to come on board. Cool, thank you.
Oh, hello everyone. My name's Campbell and I work for the National Science Technology Roadshow Trust, and we take a big truck full of science exhibits and they sit on about a 500 by 750 MDF board, and we take it to all the schools in the country. So if you had anything cool that was like robotics, tactile or visual with lights, yeah, we have a whole lot of exhibits and it's getting a bit naff. There's a lot of old magnetism stuff, but if anyone has anything really cool that all the kids across the country could see, you can contact me at Roadshow or here or yeah.
All right, well, wrap it up there. Thank you everyone for pitching. Thank you to our lovely panelists. Feel free to have a chat with them afterwards. I think there's a little bit more pizza left, but yeah, thank you all so much for coming. This event wouldn't be possible without our lovely sponsors, as well as our team, which are around somewhere, Taryn, Elise, David, Cash. Yeah, so thank you for coming. It's great to see familiar faces and new faces. We'll be sticking around. So yeah, have a good chat and we'll see you at the next meetup.